What I love about Eagle Rock is that it's not Silver Lake. There's funky people in Eagle Rock, right? In a good way. But again, it's very unpretentious. There's that word again. Eagle Rock is not a pretentious neighborhood because you do have like the place that makes their own ketchup, which is a cool thing, right? People love to denigrate hipsters, but you think about it, if you're a bon vivant of any kind, you likely share more in common with the hipsters than you don't. The hipsters like good shit, right? They want to drink their Fernet or whatever.
Hello, and welcome to Here in LA, Eagle Rock Edition. As you may have noticed, we took a brief hiatus for the Black Plague to settle down. And even though we're waxed and vaxxed and boosted, not everybody else was. And the last thing I wanted to do was be a super spreader and make people think I wasn't taking this seriously. I take everything seriously, Juanita. So we're back, and we're black, and we are in the beautiful neighborhood of Eagle Rock. Today, we're chatting it up with Joe Armstrong, who's a rock musician, a rock climber, a radio and podcast producer, and one of the best people you're ever going to meet in Eagle Rock, Glendale, or over at Tony Starts Away in Burbank. The music you'll hear throughout this hour will mostly be from Joe and his new record. And yes, it will be a record. Vinyl. Yes. Yes. So get comfy and turn up the V. And thanks for allowing us to put ourselves in a little time out. But now we are back and we are not going anywhere for a long, long time. Hey everybody, it's Joe Armstrong's house. We are in Eagle Rock, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff in just 40 minutes. Joe, you and I grew up in Illinois. Were you born there?
Was born in Alabama, but I was brought to Illinois before I had said my first words or taken my first steps. So Southern by birth, I suppose. I know a thing or two about barbecue, but Yankee, as they say, by raisin.
Grew up in Chicago. When did you move to LA?
Moved to LA about 17 years ago, I believe. So I'm
Nobody can do math.
Practically naturalized California.
What is that, 2004?
I left for California on the day of the Banda Aceh earthquake. The very day. There's a whole story associated with this. Like it was such an interesting thing because the big rental truck that when you move across the country invariably doesn't have anything to connect a stereo to. iPods barely existed at that time, so you're stuck with this radio, right? And it's a 3-day drive in this big moving truck with all your shit. I can swear, right?
Of course.
Okay, all your shit. And a dog. I just got a dog and all my things, and I'm towing my car. I'm headed to California, going west, just like the Zeppelin song, right?
Yeah.
Manifest Destiny. And so I get in, it's the day after Christmas, it's Boxing Day. That would have made it 2003, 4, whatever day that was when the earthquake happened. And I get in the car, and the first news reports are coming in. There's been an earthquake in the Indian Ocean. There's... reports are just coming in. It seems like it was kind of big, but, there's like 20 dead. And then, I'm an NPR listener to this day. And so, they would give reports, every like 20 minutes or so was the national news. And as I'm moving west, you have to change your dial just a little bit. All those NPR stations are on the left side of the dial, the low numbers. And it became apparent very quickly with these reports, by noon that day, so I left at 8 or whatever. So by 9, they're like, oh yeah, there's 200 dead. By 10, there's 500 dead. But by noon, the sheer scale of this disaster was starting to become apparent. I mean, didn't it wind up being over 200,000 dead?
I don't remember.
It was huge.
I'm an American. I can't even believe that you remember the name of the earthquake.
Dude, if I can't make money at it, if it's useless knowledge, I'm your man. You come to me. I've got you covered. I swear.
Well, we're in your beautiful apartment, which I friggin' love. I see a Tom Petty pillow. I see a Gretsch guitar. Burglars. It's not a super expensive, but it's nice. And it sounded great when I was approaching your place.
Nice of you to say. Thank you.
You've got that plugged into what over here?
That is an amplifier.
Is it now?
Smart ass, right? That is a tiny little amp called an Exits X4. I'm also a musician. tube amp aficionado, that particular thing. It's tantamount to like a Vox AC4.
Is that a tube amp?
Oh yeah, all my amps are.
Look at you.
Save one.
You've got like 10 pedals over there.
Yeah, it's my pedal board.
I don't see any wah-wah.
I do own a wah-wah pedal. They're big. They're big pedals, so they take up a lot of real estate on my board.
You've got a piano. You've got a keyboard. You've got your dog is so well behaved in her crate.
For the moment, yes.
I see you've got beer and wine. You're like a real adult.
Farm League Renaissance man is how I refer to myself.
I heard you just turned 50 years old.
Shut up, man. Shh.
Come on, you're taken.
Shh.
No,
it's the music thing. People, like, the older you get, the less people are interested in listening. I honestly, I don't care how old I am. I'm just happy to still be in the game in any way. But I do care how people perceive me to be. And by that, I mean, I don't want to be disinvited or uninvited to things because people make assumptions about me because of my age.
Well, I'll put it this way, and I'm not kissing your ass. I'm not here to kiss anybody's ass, ever. You don't look 50.
That's nice of you to say.
Also, I think it's okay to discriminate against musicians once they get older. Because, come on, most of them suck after a certain age.
Tony, most of them suck before they get
there
to
you
be
go.
a certain age.
There you go. Now, Mr. Tom Waits, exception. Mr. Tom Petty, who you've got on the wall over there.
Of course, household names.
Another exception. And I think it's good to try to be that exception.
Well, that's the goal all the way along, is to build a career, a sustainable career.
In fact, I would argue, I'll put it this way, I'd rather have older Tom Waits. Like, no, I'm sorry, more recent Tom Waits music.
Later day Tom Waits.
Yeah, wouldn't you?
That's my favorite era started in the middle. Tom Waits, if you're a fan, he has kind of three somewhat distinct phases.
That's right.
His initial phase, he came out of San Diego.
Look at you.
The drunken barroom crooner guy.
So you,
right?
but you like the Rain Dogs era is what you're saying?
That's when it starts for me because his wife, Kathleen Brennan, his musical partner and wife, he was having dreams about different sounds because she cleaned him up. You know, he was kind of a fuck up. You know, his career had gone okay, but he was living his own caricature of being the drunken, chain-smoking, gravelly-voiced piano balladeer. And it was cool. You know, those early albums are great. I love them.
Yep.
But he evolved into something so infinitely more complex than that caricature that he'd created. Now, it's a good thing. I feel like we were having this conversation before. You have to build some kind of persona, right? Like when you can be that as well. You can live that persona, but you have to create something new and interesting, or at least something different. Yeah. You know, Bowie with the lightning bolt and the what's the one? Ziggy Stardust. Yeah, thank you. Elton John with the outfits and the sunglasses and the thing. Like you have to show him something. It's showbiz, man. So Tom Waits had created this character, but some people find that character, you're in a box. You're in a box that you created for yourself. Anyway, back to Tom Waits. This is like a lesson on Tom Waits, a treatise. He wanted to transcend that. His wife, Kathleen Brennan, helped him. He got sober, thankfully. He was on that path. And created, first it was Frank's Wild Years, and then Rain Dogs. It sounded like gypsy music.
Hold on, though.
Can you use that word anymore? Can you?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
So what would it be? It's like the mode.
Well, okay, you can. I think you can say gypsy music because it refers to a certain era.
Well, that's what I mean, and it's certain scales. It's more about a musical mode,
right,
than it is the people themselves. We're in gray territory in terms of that. So forgive me if I'm stepping on anybody's toes or violating the new rules. I have no interest in doing that.
But you mentioned Frank's Wild Years,
right?
That song, Frank's Wild Years.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that about a guy in the valley?
Yeah.
Right around the corner, basically.
Yeah, I
right?
never could stand that dog. Anyway, but then the thing is, he did a couple, 2 or 3 albums in that vein, and then evolved again into this, like, I would call it industrial music. But when I say that, I don't mean 9 Inch Nails. I mean it's chains and like machines.
Yeah.
And he created
anvils.
He invented this instrument that he called the conundrum, which is this big metal cross that he just you go to the junkyard and find things and hanging on it, and he would play it like an instrument with like drumsticks or crowbars or whatever.
Yeah.
And that started with Bone Machine about 1992. Anyway, enough about
You
Tom Waits.
changed your life, sir,
I did many times.
when you came out to L.A.
I did.
Did you land here in Eagle Rock?
I landed in Glendale first. Like any good musician, I followed a girl. Although
How romantic.
it's a little more complex than that. I followed a girl in New York. I lived in New York for a while as well, 9th and 49th in Manhattan. Cool place to live.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. It's very fascinating. Endlessly
Maybe
interesting
one day
place.
I'll do a podcast to wherever that is.
Let's do it together. We'll go.
Yeah?
I would love. I haven't been back in a while, and I always tell people when they go, please pee on my doorstep at 9th and 49th for old time's sake, if you would. Had a great experience there, but it's a very, very different beast. New York is, even coming from Chicago, which is a very urban environment. New York's an entirely different thing. Moved to LA.
Where in Glendale were you at?
I was one block south of where the gallery. What's the bigger, newer mall?
The Brand?
The newer one.
Yeah, the Americana.
Yeah, the
Brand?
Americana. Yeah, 'cause the Galleria was already there.
Yeah.
They built another one right next door. So one block south. I think where Foxy's Diner is.
Love Foxy's
Right on
Diner.
Colorado. I lived within a Frisbee's throw of Foxy's Diner.
Foxy's is a block away from that jewelry store that
Mm-hmm.
has almost a fishbowl where you can watch the dudes.
Yeah, that's the one that's right on the corner of Brandon Central, right?
Yeah.
Yep. One of my least favorite intersections in the city of Glendale.
Were you a fan of Armenians before you came to Glendale?
I had only tacitly heard that a place called Armenia had even existed.
Same.
Here's the thing. A friend of mine, and I hope I'm not offending anyone when I say this either, because I've got no truck with the Armenians. They're fine, just as much as anybody else. There's jerks in every culture. I've learned that for sure. Is that I told a friend of mine who lived out here already from my hometown. I said I'm moving to Glendale, and he said, well. He said, Glendale's great if you can handle the Armenians. And I was like, what in God? What are you talking about? And once I landed in Glendale, I learned very quickly exactly what he was talking about. Again, not making any value judgment, but it's definitely a presence.
I've lived in Little Armenia for a little while, so I think it's fair to say this because I asked one of these Armenian dudes. I was like, "Why are you guys so angry all the time? You got these beautiful women all around you. You're in America," and he's like, "Because it ain't Armenia." He's like, "Are you happy?"
Well, that makes sense.
He's like, "Chicago Cub fan. Are you happy being at Dodger Stadium?" I was like, "Touche.
Yeah,
You want to be back home,
yeah.
you know?"
I can't imagine the weather's better there.
No,
I can't imagine.
but they do seem pissed off though.
Oh yeah,
For all of the immigrants that are here in LA, of which there are countless,
yeah.
they seem to be the most bitter.
The funny thing, yeah, I agree with that as well. The interesting thing for me is my mom's side is Eastern European.
Huh.
So, and then vaguely Russian, like Eastern European, Baltic states.
Yeah.
And 100% on that side. My dad's side is more of a melting pot, Scotch-Irish. But, so, that sort of like scowling, perpetually vexed, gruff, kind of macho machismo thing.
Yeah.
It didn't really manifest in my family, but I understood it in some primal way, the way that the Russians and the Baltic
Yes.
people, it's a darker perception. I've once read, if you walk down the street in Russia with a smile on your face, people think you're insane.
You know, I follow this YouTuber. I think her YouTube is called Yeah Russia, and she's I think she just graduated college, and she was commiserating with another Russian YouTuber about when they visited the U.S. for like 3 or 4 months, and the guy said he was a server at like IHOP or something, and he said at the end of the day, his face was sore because he was taught that in America you have to smile.
Oh, Jesus.
Especially at the restaurant. And he said, my muscles were not ready for that. And she is as sweet as can be. She was like, oh my God, I felt exactly the same way. How do they smile that much?
Have you been to Iowa? Surely you've been to Iowa.
Of course.
The friendliest place. You know, we come from the Midwest, you and I, originally. A place I consider to be a friendly place. Having traveled around the world, I've been to 49 of the 50 states, been to more than a dozen countries. I love where I'm from a lot. And I miss the friendliness of the people there. And it's when I go back there now, I can see it more in relief. Like we just took it for granted. Now, of course, there are jerks there too. Like we said before, there are jerks in every culture, in every town, in every gender, in every economic group you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
But I was in Iowa, and I was going to an event for which I had to shave. So I had to go, but I hadn't traveled with a razor, so I had to go to a Target on like a Saturday morning. We all know how Targets are laid out. They're about the same. You go in the front door, and then you got to take a left. This is not the multi-level ones like we have here in the big bad city. So it's a big, labyrinthine kind of situation. So you walk in, all the registers are there, but then you got to hang a left or a right, and you got to go down 15 or so aisles to where all the pharmacy and the hair care products and whatnot are.
Yeah.
That's where I knew I would find my razor, and I did. But I shit you not, between the door and where the razors were, probably 15 bright, shiny, fresh-faced kids were like, "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" And I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
But it's great. There's something. It's hard to explain because
It is great.
I've lived in cities for a long time, so I'm accustomed to being ignored. Let's say,
Right.
because there's an anonymity to living in the city, which I enjoy, right? But I also miss that esprit de corps of like joie de vivre that people have when you're from a town that people give a shit about each other. It's hard to explain.
You live on the furthest, would you call this west side of Eagle Rock?
Yes.
Okay. In between two Targets. Like you could ride a bicycle to the Glendale Target at that Glendale Galleria.
Right.
But you could probably crawl to the one in the Eagle Rock Mall.
Correct.
Can we talk about the Eagle Rock Mall?
Let's.
Because I love that mall.
I have bad news for you.
What?
Did you hear that? Now, I haven't heard anything about it in a while, but I think that mall is not long for this earth.
I can understand why. It doesn't seem healthy financially.
That's the word on the street, was that it was sold. A quick Google search will tell you as much as is publicly available, but I think it's slated for some kind of, dear God, I hate to say
it's primo real estate.
It's primo real estate. It's at the corner of two freeways in LA.
Yeah.
It's a big lot.
Huge.
It's a cool, I love this part of town. This is my favorite part of Los Angeles.
Really?
I've been here a long time. Look, if I could afford a Craftsman in South Pass, would I live in a Craftsman in South Pass?
Right.
Sure, maybe. But this ties into coming from a flat place. What I love about this part of LA is that I've got hills all over the place that are undeveloped, and that is a very, very key distinction. Yeah. When you're on the west side of LA, first of all, to start a cross-town war, everything west of Western Avenue is West LA to me.
Okay. We're talking about this mall.
Yeah, let's go back to the mall. The mall, not long for this world, I think, God help me, it's going to be like live, work, shop, nightmare.
Okay, but here's what's interesting about this mall, because I don't know about you, but I go back to Illinois usually once a year.
Right.
Because of COVID, I haven't been able to. But the mall that I grew up with is basically abandoned.
The mall?
This one hardly has any empty slots.
Well, here's a crazy thing. If you want to talk about malls, I grew up between Aurora and Naperville, two of the bigger cities in Illinois that aren't Chicago.
Right. I think I heard that Aurora is number 2.
Aurora, I think, is number 2 now.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was number 3. Rockford was always a little bit bigger.
Were you east or west Aurora?
I was east, but I was technically Aurora Township. So far north and east, I could see Fermilab, which is the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory where they've got the atom smasher. If you walked out of my front door out to where my mailbox was and looked to the north, you could see the building. Wow. We were that close.
That mall's ruined over there?
Well, the Fox Valley Mall went in when I was a kid, and at the point of it was out by Route 59 again, west of Chicago, where Naperville was trying to get it on their side of Route 59 because that would have meant all the tax revenue, et cetera, would go to Naperville. Aurora was campaigning to get it on our side. Aurora won. I don't know how. I was a kid.
Yeah.
But at the time that it was completed in the late 70s, early 80s, it was the biggest mall in the world. It predated the Mall of America. Malls were big in the 80s and 70s.
It predated Woodfield?
Well, I don't know if it predated Woodfield, but it was the biggest mall. It was, that's how they sold it to us. It was huge.
And now you're saying that mall is a ghost mall?
No, I haven't been to that mall in forever. That area just exploded. There's so much out there now.
But this is what I don't understand about this mall, though. Macy's is still running. Target isn't the greatest Target, but how can you be if you've got the Glendale Target over here?
I think... No, well, the malls of a similar size to the Eagle Rock Mall. Where I grew up, there was a mall called the St. Charles Mall.
You keep trying to go back to Illinois.
Why? But it's a frame of reference for size.
But that's for you and me.
But
the people listening to this are like...
Let's imagine a mid-sized mall in any town in America, right? Circa mid-'80s.
Uh-huh.
Mid-sized mall, anchor store at either end, maybe one in the middle, maybe a movie theater.
Yeah.
A lot of those malls are just gone.
Is that the problem with this mall over here?
I don't know.
There's no movie theater?
There was a movie theater.
Was there?
I have a close friend who grew up in Eagle Rock, graduated from Eagle Rock High School, is coincidentally moving out of California for the first time in her life in her 50s. So interesting stories coming out of her. You should talk to her. She grew up in Eagle Rock.
Where's she live now?
She just moved to Anaheim. Her husband's
Forget that then.
Husband's parent died, but she grew up in Eagle Rock. She spent most
Who
of her life there.
cares? Trader, 714.
I don't even know what that even is. But all I'm trying to say is that those malls are gone. Just gone.
But
They
that's
don't
my
even
point.
exist anymore.
That's my point. They're making money off of this mall.
Someone is.
Why tear it down for a WeWork?
It's got a weird parking situation with that double level garage, which is a earthquake hazard. That's the one thing. Every time I'm over there, those things pancake, man.
That thing can collapse?
Well, that's those multi-level parking
How do they
garages.
let it stay up there then?
Well, it probably precedes certain things get grandfathered in. You can only fix it so well. I don't know how this works. I'm not a geologist, man.
What?
Nor am I a structural engineer. I know a lot of bullshit random facts.
What's that hard hat doing over there then?
Get out of here. I love having it there. There's been a handful of times where I got like a last minute job interview and I was like, holy shit, I need a tie. And there's a Macy's right there.
There's also really good Filipino food in there.
There's really good Filipino food. There's one of those crazy like Filipino fish market situations down there. Which when the pandemic was in its heyday and people were going apeshit for groceries, there was a line out the door to get into that Filipino market down there.
It's supermarkets in floundering malls are my favorite thing because they do not belong there.
Yeah.
And yet when they're there, I can't resist but to go in.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, Virgil's Hardware just closed in Glendale. Local hardware stores, local everything. I mean, we could talk for 70 hours about the corporatization of America and my personal feelings on that.
Which is another reason I love this mall.
Which is another reason I love this mall, too. I mean, granted, it's anchored by a Target and a Macy's.
You got to, though.
But fine. But Virgil's closed. I think they took most of the stuff over to the Do It Center in Burbank. I think that's still a, we call it the Do It in the Butts.
Hey, now.
Which is it's an inside joke, which is not also an inside joke. But so it just I love the local stuff. You know, Glendale's interesting because again, close to Eagle Rock.
Yes,
but it's a municipality unto itself, like Burbank,
right?
Like Pasadena. So much of LA is part of that same monolith that is LA. So it's a different situation.
Which I hope this podcast is going to teach the listeners over time that there's a difference between the neighborhood of Eagle Rock and the city of Glendale that's right next door.
Correct.
And some of that might have to do with commercialization. For example, Colorado, as we go past the mall towards Pasadena, I really love Colorado.
I love it.
Over there.
I love it. I love this neighborhood, man. I really, really do. I discovered it kind of by accident because when I first lived here, like I said, I lived over in Glendale. We would sometimes go to the Eagle Rock Trader Joe's. The Glendale Trader Joe's has since been moved. Now it's a laser tag place, I think. Anyway, that's LA for you. But
is Is the parking okay at the Eagle Rock Trader Joe's?
Parking sucks at all the Trader Joe's.
But at least you got some street parking, though.
Yeah, but it's one of those places where it's like it's close kind of the heart of Glendale, and it's also close to the freeway. The Trader Joe's one is far superior, which they also redid, although they kept it in the same location.
Yeah.
But there are certain tricks that, you learn your tricks when you live in a neighborhood, like where to park and still be able to saunter in and saunter out without going through the bloodbath of a Trader Joe's.
Saunter is the perfect word for that street. You can, if you want to.
Oh, you mean Eagle Rock Bowl?
Yeah.
Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah.
You can park at the end of it, hold hands with your girl, and just stroll down one side of the street, and then turn around and stroll on the other side. And there's cool little restaurants.
Yeah.
What is it? The Oinkster?
The Oinkster's there. It's like upscale fast food.
Which is weird.
There's a few. It's good, though. They make their own ketchup, I think. It's a detail. If you're into artisanal ketchup, it's the place for you.
What's the coffee shop at the very end of it?
The
like
right
like
the middle
it's
of
a
it?
50s. It's a 50s coffee shop. Like it's Cindy's or something.
Oh yeah, Cindy's, and they do a lot of film.
Is it Cindy's?
Yeah, they do Cindy's.
Look at
There's
me.
a lot of filming at Cindy's.
Well, no crap. I mean,
it's a cool
it makes
looking old
sense because
place.
it looks like typical Midwestern.
Yeah,
50s.
Yeah.
Have you eaten there though?
I have eaten there.
What's it like?
It's good, somewhat spendy for what it
Oh.
is, but it's good. But for someone who is an independent freelance musician, media creator type, it's a little prohibitive
Right.
to go on any kind of regular basis.
Then let me ask you about your lady, because when I had a lady living in
A special lady friend, as I prefer to refer to her as.
when I was dating a 75-year-old woman. No, when I was living in Westwood, there was Dolores's coffee shop, which R.I.P. And we lived a couple blocks away from there. And she loved on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, saying, "Can we go to Dolores's?" And I was like, why are we paying $25 at the end of the day for bacon and eggs when I can make that for you right now, topless?
I can answer that. I can
ahead.
take a crack at it at least.
Please do.
It's to say I'm a pub guy,
Yes.
not a bar guy. I don't want to go to the sports bar. I like going to the pub because it's the commiseration.
Right.
It's the vibe of it's the din of the conversation.
Yes.
I've met lifelong friends at the pub.
Are you a Tony's Darts Away guy?
I am a Tony Starts
That-
Away guy.
it
That
ju-
is
it
my
just re- it-
that's my spot in LA.
Interesting.
Yeah, on Magnolia, easy parking. What's great about it, I'm a beer nerd. Been making beer for 20 years. Tony Starts Away in Burbank on Magnolia gets my official nod. You won't see me wearing branded things, but I have Tony's hat. I will.
Do you
wear.
play the board games when you go over there?
I have, but we tend to not because it's a pub. I'm just there to shoot the shit. I'm there to
Drink good beers.
and drink good beer. But it's the thing about Tony's. As much of a craft beer, I've been a craft beer guy since the 90s. It can get very pretentious very quickly.
Oh.
And
I don't care about that.
well, I do because I'm a Midwesterner, man.
But who do you think is judging you? Fuck that guy.
It's not that I feel like I'm being judged. It's the whole experience can feel kind of pretentious.
But again,
because
who are you nervous is looking down upon you?
it has nothing to do with how people perceive me or how I feel about anything. It's about the environment itself. Different things have
The
different
fellow pubbers you have a problem with?
the vibe, right? You go to a sports bar, you expect a certain vibe.
Yes.
You go to a club. You go to the club, you're expecting a certain vibe. You don't go to the club to have a pub conversation,
Right.
nor do you go to the pub to have a club experience,
Yes.
right? Some of the craft beer places, and I say this, I guess, somewhat out of love, I'm part of this community, in as much it is a community, can just get snooty, right? Tony's, there's no liquor, first of all, so you don't have to worry about that kind of vibe, even though I love some scotch. Love a good margarita, love lots of things, love a good martini. But the vibe is different. Tony's is like a dive bar, except the beer is great. That's the key. Wood paneled walls, old beer signs like your buddy in Chicago's dad's basement bar that he built back in the 70s and 80s. And the staff is great. I can't speak highly enough of them. There's a limited menu. The food's fine. I don't go there for the food.
Right.
But they also cater to a lot of veg and vegan people there, which is great. It's options, so slightly healthier choice. The beer is all great. There's no shitty beer of any kind.
Yeah.
But you don't get that. You never get looked down upon for, or how I can even say this. I don't know. It's never an issue. Everyone's there to have great conversation and great beer. And
Right.
that's just an end of it, man.
Yeah.
They have some TVs, but the place isn't dominated by TVs. And I've never seen a fight there.
Challenge accepted. Is Kobe in the top 5?
I'd have to look at a longer list, man, because
I would not say so. No.
it's hard to say, man.
I would not say
the
so.
league is so different in the different times. You know, you go back to the old school Cats.
I mean, God bless Kobe, and it's sad ending, tragic ending.
Tragic ending.
And I love all the murals everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
I don't see that many murals in Eagle Rock of Kobe,
Yeah, not as many.
but whatever. But no, not top 5.
Eagle Rock's funky, man. Tying it back into what we were talking about before, what I love about Eagle Rock is that it's not Silver Lake. There's funky people in Eagle Rock, right? In a good way. But again, it's very unpretentious. There's that word again. Eagle Rock is not a pretentious neighborhood because you do have like the place that makes their own ketchup, which is a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
People love to denigrate hipsters, but you think about it, if you're a bon vivant of any kind, you likely share more in common with the hipsters than you don't.
Right.
The hipsters like good shit.
Yeah.
Right? They want to drink their Fernet or whatever.
Bob
but
Dylan's first couple records would have been called hipster music.
sure. Kramer was a hipster. We all love Kramer, right?
What about Video is going to be over there?
I've heard good things, and I think it was that sign went up. I jogged through there all the time.
Yeah.
And that sign went up before the pandemic, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously record scratch, everything comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah, whatever.
But the sign's still there, so I hope it does. That was a dance studio, but not like a New York style one, like an old school ballroom dancing studio.
So let me ask you about the fact that you climb these crazy mountains here in LA.
Am I crazy for climbing them, or the mountains crazy, Tony? That's the question.
Did you see that? We can talk about Naperville for 1 minute.
Uh-oh. See, now you're doing it.
Did you see the photoshopped image of the
Yes.
petition?
Yes.
Let's put a mountain on Naperville.
Yes. Tony, I have a couple best friends. One of those two best friends' grandfather was the mayor of Naperville.
How about
To
that?
tie it all together, he was the mayor of Naperville who lost the bid to get the mall on the east side of Route 59.
Loser. So he wasn't a mafia guy then.
No.
That's the
No,
problem.
he had the wrong last name, I suppose.
Okay, so you go hiking Mount Whitney? Where do you go mostly when you go hiking?
Well, locally, Mount Baldy, Mount San Antonio.
How
which
far away is that, driving-wise?
30-ish miles. It's about an hour to get to the trail. 30 miles to get to the trailhead
So
from
in
here.
the wintertime, is this winter?
Yes.
Okay. This is February for people in the future. I ask because we're in bikinis right now, and for Chicagoans, this would be...
I wore my finest bikini because I knew you were coming over.
So in winter, if you want to do some cold, snowy mountain climbing,
Mountaineering is what we would call it.
you only have to drive an hour.
Yeah.
Again, one of the beauties of living here.
Shit, man. If you would have told me when I was growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, standing at a school bus stop at -5 degrees with winds whipping past, freezing my cojones off, that I would intentionally drive to a mountain with an ice axe and crampons, I would have thought you were out of your mind. So set that, just wasn't a thing that we considered. We would see Nova specials on the guys climbing Mount Everest. But even when I moved out here, if you would, 17 years ago, if you would have told me that mountaineering was something I would get into, first of all, I would think, what, are you out of your mind? Los Angeles is fake breasts and palm trees and the entertainment industry, with all due respect to those things, as wonderful as they all are. I didn't even know there was a 10,000-foot mountain with snow on it every winter, less than an hour from downtown Los Angeles. I would have thought you were nuts.
And bringing it back to Eagle Rock, if you were living in Venice, it would take you an hour just to get here. So
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of living in Eagle Rock, which is I think, the most eastern neighborhood of LA County.
LA City?
LA City.
LA City?
Thank you. Right.
Well, where does it break when you're down by like Boyle Heights, though? When does it switch over into other municipalities?
Yeah,
I
you're
have no idea.
Yeah, no.
It's
so let's put an
one of
asterisk. Let's put an asterisk on that statement. So, anyways, being on this side of town,
Right.
we'll put it like that, is the perfect place to be if you're a nut with
Yeah.
crampons.
If you're into outdoor activities and you want to get to Sierra Nevada-like conditions relatively easily, being in Burbank, maybe, Glendale, Eagle Rock, Pasadena is the ideal place for you.
Have you done this crazy climbing recently?
You mean, I have not been up Mount Baldy this particular winter. We got all of our snow around the holidays, but Omicron was going ape shit at the time.
But isn't that a safe place to be?
It is, but man, things just felt weird. The holidays had just ended. We
Yeah.
had just gotten a lot of rain, which is the best time to go. Although I got to tell you, with all due respect to the Angelinos, they have no earthly clue how to drive. Forget rain.
True.
Put him in the snow on an incline up by Mount Baldy. You wouldn't believe. We made the mistake of trying to go up there on New Year's Day one time because it had just snowed, or just rain, which meant snow, thinking, oh, this will be great. No one will be up there. We made it up there fine because we went up there. It was dark. We got up there at 5 a.m. or whatever. Coming down at noon, there was a line. If anyone's ever been to Mount Baldy or Mount Baldy Village or skied up at the, I always forget the name of the ski area that's up there. Maybe it's just called Mount Baldy. I don't even know. But coming down, it was wall-to-wall cars for miles and miles and miles. And that's the time people got stuck up there because there's no gas. There's no services up there. People just got stuck in their cars. You see that happen from time to time.
So we should get a gas station together.
No, the people should just stay away. If you don't know what you're doing, maybe you should come up another time.
But they don't know what they're doing.
They don't. Most people don't about anything. Hell, I don't know what I'm doing.
So, do you get any kind of a spiritual buzz when you are in nature, pushing yourself physically, accomplishing these goals, or is it something else?
If you allow me to use the word spiritual in a non-religious way, then yes, absolutely. I do not commune with what other people would. For me personally, since you asked me personally, I don't go there to commune, nor do I commune with any kind of what someone would perceive to be a conscious deity or deities when I'm doing that kind of thing. But it can very much be said, in as much as I would ever go to church or a church. I've sung in tons of churches, grew up Catholic. I was even an altar boy once upon a time.
I think that's why then. I have a theory that if you were in the church very young and in a more than average way, altar boy,
Mm-hmm.
it's not cool when you're older. Like for some reason because you didn't discover it yourself is my theory.
Okay.
It doesn't ring true to you.
Yeah.
And I would say this extends to people who go to Catholic schools, any sort of religious
I went to
school.
Catholic school through 5th grade.
There you go. But if you somehow become spiritual later in life, where you're the one making the decision, then I feel it rings true. For example, Mary Carrion, who we interviewed in the Venice episodes, put a time-lapse picture of mushrooms growing out of a tree stump, psychedelic mushrooms. And first thing I thought was, oh, look at God showing off over there. But I think somebody like you probably would never go down that path, which I'm not judging you or me. I'm just saying that I feel like if I were in nature, and actually anytime I am in nature, I think about God. And I think, what a genius way to do the circle of life. Of course you're going to need trees. And of course they're going to bring out oxygen. And of course the animals are going to make carbon dioxide. Like this thing to me is not luck. This isn't like, a bunch of gases just exploded and all of a sudden you've got magic mushrooms that trip you out. Or lungs. or skin that heals itself, or a butthole. I mean, that's kind of good engineering, And so, but I totally get why people don't. But I don't think I could ever resist thinking about God if I were climbing a mountain. In fact, if there's danger, I'm going to be like begging him for help.
And it's always a him now, isn't it?
Well, I hate to say it, but I guess I was raised that way.
In the tradition in which you were raised, and wherever you came to it yourself.
I mean, I belong to a church that tries to knock that off. Mm-hmm. But that's my point, is that I always kind of go there. And I'm fascinated by people who don't go there.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I live in our culture, and as much as anyone else does. I read, I see what's going on. I've paid attention my whole life. God, he, she, they, is a very important concept to a lot of people.
Not you.
Right? Not me.
That's fine.
I don't know how else to say it.
So agnostic?
Atheist.
Atheist.
Sure.
Right
But here's the thing. I don't need a qualifier because I'm confident in my lack of belief. But I also, because people forget, or if you do any reading about this, atheists are the most marginalized group of any group. People loathe atheists more. Like if you look at polls of people running for office, the person they would least likely vote for is an atheist. Now, me personally, I would go completely the opposite way. I would be most likely to vote for an atheist. Now,
right. Has a political atheist ever come close? Was Ralph Nader an atheist?
I don't know. There's been a lot of conjecture that there are a lot more atheists in politics than is revealed, because you cannot, for the aforementioned reason I just said before, it is an untenable political position to say that in our very religious culture,
right,
in America.
It sucks. That totally sucks.
I don't want to name names, and I have no data to support any of these things. Some people suspect that a guy like Barack Obama would be an atheist. Comes from an African-American tradition, very African-Americans. Sure. Again, this is a gross generalization, but there seems to be, on the whole, a more religious culture than culture at large. Are you nodding yes? Am I crazy, or are you nodding? No,
I'm saying if I was Obama's best friend and he was trying to be a politician, I'd say between you and me, you can try to be this atheist all you want, but you got to fake it, man. Here's some Haley Jackson you got to learn.
Yeah, there are people who talk about it more or less than others, right? Because, again, it's a vilified group in our society, right? So I think that, this is not the first time I've said this kind of thing in an interview. And I have, you would say the courage of my lack of convictions, but it's not a conviction. I have the courage of my lack of belief. But what I was going to say before is the only asterisk I will give, not to qualify my position, except to say that I'm an atheist who believes that love, kindness, empathy, caring, understanding are the most important values you can possibly have. I just do not derive it from the carrot and the stick of some kind of promise of an eternal life after I'm dead. Because I will say this, and I'm hardline about this. You, nor the Pope, nor anyone else has any clue what happens when we die. And anyone who tells you otherwise is bullshitting you. It's very simple. No one has any idea. You can hedge your bets. There's that bargain. There's a name for that paradigm where you live a good life just in case there's a heaven or just in case there's an afterlife. But I just don't need the carrot and the stick. I just think you should do it irrespective of that. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
And I would say the Bible would call BS on that bargain, because the Bible says you're going to be judged by your heart. So if your heart is, oh, you're just hedging your bets, next.
Yeah. Well, this is very deep topics we stumbled into here.
This podcast is for real, bro.
But it's I've given a lot of thought to this. And I've spent my whole life, I grew up in Catholic schools, and I was, just small I indoctrinated with that dogma. And none of it ever especially made any sense to me from the get-go. From the earliest stories of Genesis. Now, you could say that these are parables, or you could say that these are ways to comprehend things that took millennia. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But nobody was there. You're telling me someone wrote this down, how and why and when and with what? And then you get to the Garden of Eden. Now we've got misogyny right out of the gate. You're blaming it on the woman right out of the gate. So, no, I reject that concept for that simple reason alone.
Mama sees me there, a breath upon the air, but I am not scared. I am not scared.
Let's go to your podcasts.
Sure. Yeah.
One of the podcasts that you do is with a comedian. Is she a comedian or is she a writer?
A comedian. I'm going to tell her you said that. She's a law school professor.
That's right.
I am totally going to tell her that.
But you guys don't come across as dry on this thing at all.
That's not, of course, that's the goal. The goal. Jessica Levinson is the host. I co-host some of the episodes. She's absolutely brilliant, whip smart. Met her because she gives a lot of legal commentary. You'll see her on CBS News even now on the regular. You'll hear her on lots of other news networks, local, international. We launched the podcast during the pandemic. The goal is to make, and continues to be, to make topics of law and politics relatable to people. And it's not a podcast for lawyers. It's not a podcast for judges or for members of the judicial system, whatever. It blends those two things. The kind of little catchphrase, Bart Simpson catchphrase, is like politics and law and a lot of things in between those things, because you need some room to move, right? The more specific it is, you can find your niche audience. But we really want to make these things relatable because I'm endlessly fascinated by politics. Jessica teaches law, and there's a lot of political news, a lot of legal news in our modern world.
How did you guys meet?
We met as a function of her being a legal expert. I don't want to say pundit because she's not really a pundit. She's giving her expert legal opinion on matters of legal news. Started on, I was working on Larry Mantle's show at KPCC, and she was someone that we would book. And, when you book people not regularly, because Larry does rotate a large bullpen of guests in and out of his show. Yeah. But there are some people that are kind of go-tos for certain things. And I would book her for things. So I kind of got to know her a little bit then. Wound up at KCRW for a little bit. I know that Jessica has done shows, and she's, I think, still does some things with Madeline Brand. Oh. Who's on KCRW, yep. And who was at the time on KPCC once upon a time. And then when I was at KABC, I produced a show there for about 6 or 7 years, like the senior producer there. There was a lot of legal news that needed to be discussed, and I went back through my list of people in my Rolodex, if you remember what one of those is.
Did you really have one?
No, of course not. It's become like a term now, kind of like right. Xerox, to Xerox. There's a name for something like that when it's a brand that becomes part of our lexicon.
It's an Armstrong.
My friend has another. He has gerunded my name for something else. It's kind of like MacGyvering something. He'll send me send a picture of some guy who invented some creative way to stack firewood, and he'll send me a picture and then type with a hashtag Armstrong.
You're not producing any of these shows anymore. These radio shows.
No radio right now. All podcasts.
If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. When you call guests like this, do they ever get paid for being on these shows?
No.
And that's okay with them? They understand that?
That's kind of like the base tenet of journalism, is you're asking people for their expertise.
These talk shows are considered journalism?
Which ones? The
NPR, KBC?
If not hard journalism, there's certainly journalism adjacent.
Right. For sure.
You're discussing issues.
And the New York Times doesn't pay their sources.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Now, certain situations not ones I've been involved with, but certain shows, things you see on TV, like when Jessica is a regular contributor to MSNBC, she writes columns in MSNBC, she gets compensated for that.
There you go.
When she is she appears regularly. I don't know what the terms of these are in the least, but when you see someone who's a regular contributor to a CBS News or what have you, ABC News, they may have a compensation thing because they're appearing on the regular. But if it's just someone they're interviewing, Joe Schmo, PhD from Rutgers, because he or she is an expert in one specific topic, generally, no, they're not being paid for
So
their time.
what's a guest like her's motivation to be on Larry's show, on Pat Morrison's show?
To be completely honest, you should direct that question to her or any of these people who appear on those shows. I know Jessica does a lot of legal commentary. It's something that she's, built a side career in that for a long time. And some of them, like I said, she does get compensated for when she writes columns for MSNBC, when she appears on, or as a regular on certain
And maybe all these freebies helped her get that gig at MSNBC.
Yeah, it all kind of ties in together. Like, think of anybody else in any other endeavor doing what they do, right? There's pro bono work for lawyers. There's where was I? I was out in the world and I saw an advertisement on a ball field for a local business. Highland Cafe sponsors some school thing. They don't make money for that, but they get their sign up there. Now, we're getting into the gray area of exposure. People can die of exposure. But there is a benefit to that in a certain scope or in a certain realm where you're contributing something to someone and you're getting something back that is fungible necessarily.
Yeah.
But it's tied into a bigger pie.
Yeah.
It's just one part of it, right? Because as Jessica or other people appear on regular things, I can't speak for anyone else. I can't even speak for Jessica, honestly, nor would I. But to get the paid gigs, sometimes you have to do the freebie stuff. I will tie this into mentioning my next podcast because I want to make sure I get a plug in there. I've done this one for over 10 years.
Oh, yeah?
It's called Independence Day, T''S. You can find it at, do you want a website? Do you want a URL? I can't remember.
Sure.
JoeArmstrong.com/indepday, INDEPDAY. Now, Indep Day also is my handle on Instagram, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. You can find
IndepDay.com was taken?
I owned it for 10 years. It was stolen from me by a Chinese company just this last fall.
They knew its value.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. It wasn't like there was tons of traffic on there. But I went to, I had to go dormant because there's a performance aspect of it. I bring musicians in, we have a chat, much like we're having a chat now, and they perform a few songs. Now, I mix everything and assemble everything later, so it's not live. Everything's fully mixed and sounds pretty good, at least I hope. It's the goal. The show had to go dormant because I couldn't get musicians singing in a room because you're aspirating and vapors and COVID and everything going everywhere. So I suspended the show for most of the pandemic when things started to open up and I was vaccinated and boosted and everything and people were more comfortable, musicians were more comfortable coming in, started back up again. So I went to the website to see, okay, I haven't been on here in a while. Let's see what's going on. And it was some Chinese gibberish on there. And I felt like I'd been shot with an arrow through the heart. 10 years I've worked on this. Wow. It's a complicated scenario that involves a faulty automated renew and some other complicated things. But yes, I did own indepday.com for a very long time. And so it happens. It can be that which is yours can no longer be yours through no fault of your own.
So the gist of that podcast is getting musicians in to jam and then talk about music?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in the music industry in the last 20-ish years. The bottom quite literally fell out financially of the business. When we were kids, when the CD heyday, cheap to reproduce, they were making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Here comes Napster. Here comes the subsequent things. Here comes streaming after that. We've all watched what's happened with Spotify and Joe Rogan. If nothing else, it has served to illustrate how little money musicians are being made. Now, there are people lined up on all sides of all fences, just like every other divisive issue nowadays. Yep. So wherever you stand on this, look, fine, just defend your position, right? But I will tell you from the perspective of a musician, and someone who talks to musicians professionally, and someone who knows what, professional musicians who are far higher up in the strata than I am, up the pyramid. The money isn't what it was, right? People see Kanye, people see Tom Petty, people see the limousines and the cocaine, and most musicians aren't making anything close to that.
Which is nuts, because when Napster was happening and the record labels were sweating bullets, because they were like, the Pandora's box has been opened.
Yep.
Everything
is free now. So says
how do we
William
fix
Welsh.
it? And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I worked at a record store for a little while.
I worked at a record store for a spell.
Greatest job in the world, right?
It's pretty cool. Mostly what I was paid to do is keep the local high school kids from stealing CD copies of Nirvana's Nevermind.
Wow.
That was like my prime directive. It got because that was the hottest record at the time. It had come,
of course,
and it got so bad that we would keep Nevermind behind the counter. We'd have 10 copies of Nevermind, and in the slot in the CD stacks would be a plate that says, "If you want a copy of Nevermind, we've got them. Just come go see the guy at the counter."
The average American at that point was spending something like $35 a year on music. You and I.
And those are $1985, which is a lot more than $35.
Basically, they
now.
were saying every household will buy 4 or 5 albums a year, and that's it. Just like most people will only go to the movie theater 2 or 3 times a year, and that's it. And so during Napster, they were like, okay, so how do we get $45 out of people digitally? What if Napster was a subscription, $5 a month? And so what's that, $60? So out of the $60, Napster gets 20 and the record labels get 40, and everybody's happy again. And the consumer's really happy because they get actually more selection. They don't only have 4 records now. They can have whatever they want. And the record industry is just as fat as they were before Napster. This was the theory.
Sure.
This was the theory.
Okay, got it.
If everybody's still, if the record label is still getting the money, then, and Lord knows the labels were fat and happy in the 80s. So what ended up happening? Spotify and all these places show up, and it's 10, 12, 15 bucks a month. The labels are part owners of Spotify. They get 50% of the subscription, but the musicians are making way less now.
Right.
So I kind of think that that's where the area of solution can be, if I'm being a Christian.
Well, and look what happened, right? It pushed artists to live performance as to move their main revenue stream to that, and merch to a certain extent.
But they shouldn't have to, because they were doing that anyhow. Kids are not going to be going to concerts if it's a grand. Joe, before we leave, you've got some rock and roll coming out, don't you?
I do. I have brand new music. I started working on an album before the pandemic. It would have come out before the pandemic, but like so many other things, it got waylaid by the pandemic. So I continued working on it. We have interesting stories about finishing up the vocals because we all couldn't be in the same room. So I have a producer for this project, so I ran a microphone out into the front yard, set up an easy up out there and a talkback mic so the producer could talk back to us working on the record. So I was in my isolation booth that I built in a closet in my dining room.
So we're talking like a good 15 yards away.
Yeah. Well, everybody was remote. So my engineer was at my studio, which is in the corner of my living room at the control desk area, and he had a mask on. And I was in the ISO booth, all separated from everyone else. Because this was long before everyone was vaccinated. It wasn't even on the horizon yet. Producer was outside because he felt safest being there. So we finished up the vocals that way. It should be coming out by late spring, early summer of this year. There's a huge vinyl backlog right now, though. Supply chain issues that started kind of before the pandemic that just got really exacerbated. So vinyl, some of the places have quoted me a year to get vinyl.
You're pressing this on vinyl intentionally?
Intentionally, that's the goal. If people are going to buy physical product now, they're more apt to buy vinyl. People don't really buy CDs anymore. I will press some CDs because you still use them sometimes for promotional purposes or coasters, for example. But CDs are so cheap to replicate that the basic idea is that some will go out for press and radio and that kind of thing. But if people come to a show, I mean, it's kind of like that Radiohead record. Like, I'll sell you a record for whatever you want to give me. Like, you want to take one, take one. You want to give me $5, give me $5. I'd like to sell them for 10.
I hate to say it, but I don't have either a vinyl player or I don't even think I have a CD player in my house. I have one in my car.
Yeah.
I think probably the best way for people to give me music is maybe a thumb drive.
Yeah. Some artists do that. Like, well, some artists are pressing cassettes now. Going like ultimate nostalgia.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that was a format. It was a big format when I was in high school.
Yeah.
That's our main thing. Before CDs.
Is there a theme of this new record? What's it called, first of all?
I don't have official title. I think I don't want to give it away because I think I have a title, but I'm 99% sure the artwork's not done yet, so I won't really know until that's been etched in stone. I do have a theme. It's kind of a political record because I was pretty pissed off about the lack of empathy that happened in our society over the course of the last, let's say, 6 or 7 years, not naming any names.
Empathy towards what?
Each other.
Okay.
Each other. People, I've got this, not to get too deep into it, but it seems like Americans just don't like each other anymore.
True.
They got their head up their own asses. Not everybody, of course. There's plenty of kindness out there in the world as well, but it's something I definitely watched happen. It was like a groundswell of just this lack of empathy. And the lack of empathy, my reaction to it surprised me. Because you'd think, look, love begets love, hate begets hate, kindness begets kindness. And if you what is it? MLK said only love can conquer hate or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But my reaction to people not having any empathy was to not have any empathy for the people who didn't have empathy. It pissed me off, because I like people. I really, really do. I talk, much like you. I talk to people everywhere I go. And not to an annoying extent, I hope, but I just like people, man. I like talking to them. And everyone's got a story, and I want to hear everyone's story. But what I found was, not that institutionalized racism and things of that nature were a surprise to anybody who'd been actually paying attention for any part of their lives, but it became open, became overt, and that made me angry and sad. So I couldn't just, I thought I would make a punk record because that's kind of the energy for that kind of, like, people are being jerks to everybody. But I'm not the biggest punk fan in the world. It has its place. I respect it, but my music is more complex, I think. Tom Petty style rock and roll is what I go for. I want it to be relatable.
You gave me some clips.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you talk yourself? Why don't you tell me a little bit about one of these clips, and we'll play it.
Let's see. What did I send you? I'm trying to remember what I sent you. I need to know which one you're going to play out.
You tell me, and I'll play it out.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to look at my hard drive.
Well, tell me your favorite song, and then you give me that.
Well, songs are like kids, man. I don't have a favorite song.
I have favorites of everything.
Well, you obviously don't have children.
I'm a Cub fan, as you are. Who's your favorite Cub?
My favorite Cub is the Cub that's winning at bat at that particular time, or perhaps winning on the mound. Let's see. It probably makes sense to play. Gosh, I wish I could remember what I had sent you. I've done so much work since then, just since yesterday. Let's just go with this. The basic theme of the record, like I said, is that lack of empathy and how it made me feel and how I'm uncomfortable with those feelings of lack of empathy. Now, not the whole record's not like that. It's kind of half and half. Some of it are my typical material that talks about girls and cars and dogs and being outside and just living in life, the people. But there's some material on there that's kind of amped up protest songs. So one of the songs that I'm guessing you're hearing right now is probably an amped up protest song. There's probably some loud crashing guitars, some loud crashing drums. There's some screaming Hammond organ. Was very. I love the Hammond organ. It's all over the record.
Are you playing the organ?
No, I've got a very, very talented guy out of Chicago, our hometown, who plays with his day job. He's a blues cat. He's been playing forever. He's a professional guy. His main gravy gig was playing with a guy named Ronnie Baker Brooks, which was legendary blues musician Lonnie Brooks' son. So his name's Daryl Coots, and Mr. Coots, Daryl, my friend, has toured all over the world playing in blues bands since he was in his early 20s. And we're kind of buds, and I pay him. He's a session cat too. But man, the guy is a genius. He does very close to that Benmont Tench style, like from the Heartbreakers, Tom
Sure.
Petty's band. Just a brilliant, brilliant musician. If there was any justice in the world, everyone would know who Daryl Coots was. But I'm very fortunate that he plays on all my records. Got some other heavy hitter cats on this. A bass player named Taras Pradanu, played with Dwight Yoakam for a number of years, played with Lucinda Williams for a number of years. Now he plays with Richard Thompson. That's his main gig. Amazing, amazing. He's a wizard on the bass. Brian Whelan produced it. Brian played with Dwight Yoakam for a number of years. He's got a bunch of great records of his own. I'm trying to think who else is on this record. I'm very, very happy to have these people on this record. But I hope everyone go to joearmstrong.com. You can preview tracks by then. It'll be on Spotify as well and all the streaming services when it does come out. And buy music from musicians, even if it's not me. Buy if you see music that you like. The streaming stuff, not to pile on, and I don't want to go down the Joe Rogan road, but just put money in their hands. None of the musicians are making the kind of money that you think that they're making. So put money in their hands. It'll make you feel better. It'll make them feel better, and everybody wins. So thanks, everybody, for listening.
How great about Eagle Rock that 10 minutes you're at the Greek.
I love Eagle Rock, man. We've alluded to this in a couple different ways. I grew up in a flat place. There was some glacial terrain around. So it is my favorite thing. Now, I wish people wouldn't move here because I would like to stay here. We can't afford to buy.
You're moving to Bakersfield.
Don't say such things. But I love that there are undeveloped hills around. Yeah. That's a huge, huge.
Have you climbed Eagle Rock?
I've not. I've been past it a million times. It's a kind of a short little thing.
Is it possible to climb Eagle Rock?
I think I've seen photographs of people kind of up there. I think you kind of come from the back way. I don't know that you go up like the Eagle part that faces the 134. I think you kind of go around the back way. I think you can go up there. I've hiked all around these hills. I hiked tying more things together. I did the John Muir Trail a couple years ago in the summer of 2020.
You hate the box I keep trying to put you in.
You do. I do. No boxes. But this is going to be germane to it, though. It's going to tie into Eagle Rock. Exactly. You mark my words. When the pandemic hit and the hammer dropped, everything closed. Even the hiking trails closed for a while.
Did they really?
Everything closed.
Why would they close?
Well, they didn't know. At the very beginning, people forget at the very beginning of this, we know so much more now. At the very beginning, people were bleaching their groceries on a daily basis. True. We had no idea how virulent this was, how transmissible it was, how deadly it was.
The church across my street still do that.
Everything was closed. Even little local hiking trails were closed. So my special lady friend and I are very active. We have a dog. We like to get out and hike. So initially we're just doing like urban hikes, just walking around. When I've toured internationally, tying even more things together, I would take running shoes. So I've jogged in Tokyo. I've jogged in Nagoya. I've jogged in Brisbane, Australia. I've jogged in Sydney, jogged in Melbourne, jogged in Germany, jogged in England.
You had to go on the other side of the street to jog in England.
Yeah. But when you're going slowly, you see things in the neighborhood. You experience the neighborhood. You smell what people's food's cooking smells like.
Isn't that the best?
You talk to people. You bump into people. I love that. But hold on. I'm going to tie it all together. This is all a big thing.
Tom Waits said, "There's no better way to listen to music than down the alley through an open window."
Yeah, man. Yeah. Tom Waits, an idol of mine. Don't have many heroes, but Tom Waits is a hero of mine. Tying it all together, if I can do this, all the hiking trails were closed. I luck into the golden ticket for the John Muir Trail. These are very, very hard permits to get. The traditional route starting in Yosemite Valley at Happy Isles, which is close to Curry Village, hiking all the way 210 miles through the Sierra Nevada to Mount Whitney Summit, and then you hike out about 11 miles and you come home.
What? 200 miles?
220 or so all told.
Each way?
Well, you do it one way. It's a through hike. Pacific Crest Trail's
What,
way
there's a
longer.
helicopter that's going to fly you home?
No. Someone picks you up at the Mount Whitney. You can hike out to Whitney Portal, which is
A
right by
special lady
Longpine.
friend or like a real
in
friend?
my case, my special lady friend came to get me.
Wow.
I've got the coolest special lady friend in the entire
Sure do.
universe. I will go on record as saying that. I'm extremely lucky every day. But this is the Eagle Rock thing. This is getting it back to tying it into everything. This is the box bit, I promise. So, but I've got a train now. And I can't hike on the big mountains. I live in Eagle Rock. I've got hills all over the place. I get my backpack. I throw 30 or 40 pounds worth of stuff in the backpack, and I drop on some headphones, and I just start walking around the neighborhoods. I'm up in Adams Hill. I'm up in across Eagle Rock by Occidental, where those solar panels are. I'm up all over the place. I would hike 6 hours in a day. I have no idea how many miles it is. Now, it's not the same thing as being in terrain, but I'm wearing, running shoes, whatever. But, look, man, necessity is the mother of invention, and off you go.
So, people of Eagle Rock, if you see Joe Armstrong,
People of Eagle Rock,
with a backpack with 30 pounds of bricks or whatever, sprinkle your hose on him.
if it's a hot day, sure.
Like,
That'd be nice.
Screw with him a little bit.
Or put up a lemonade stand. Tacos.
No, I'm saying mirror what that Muir Trail's going to be like.
Mm-hmm. Release some bears.
Yeah.
I saw 4 bears over my my John Muir Trail hike.
I hear your dog trying so bad to
That's the dog.
get a hug. Oh, and the special lady friend.
Here she comes.
Hey! All right. I think that means that this is the end of our conversation.
Tony, thank you for taking the time.
Joe,
man.
God bless you. Be safe out there.
And bless you as well.
Oh, I said God bless you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, look, I'm not offended, man.
How great was Joe? You know who we'd also like to have an all-star rock and roll jam with? Our Patreons, who are just a cowbell away. When you stoke us, you're saying, Tony, Jordan, here's a new music stand. Here's a used microphone. Here's a damn banjo. Every donation you hand over helps us keep this insane project rolling. So shout out to our Patreons, Nancy Rommelman, Sean Atlow, Matt Mills, Sean Wallace, Greg and Molly, Jamie Taylor, Mark Johnson, Kira Ann, Barney Grinke, Ben Welsh, Henry Furman, Jen Adams, The Lonely Chair, Trevor Wilson, and Bree Wild. Want to hear your name at the end of next week's show? Go to patreon.com/hereinla and give till it hurts. Also, shout out to our Angelinos. To be an Angelino, all you got to do is PayPal us $25 or more, and we will list you on the Here in LA website forever. You will also be given a number to denote how early you got in to make this dream come alive. For example, Angelino number 1 is Allie Miller. Number 2, George Wright. 3, Rita Joanne. 4, Jason Sutter. 5, Grant Houghton. 6, Rob Baker. 7, Kev Cheng. And 8 is Brenda Garcia. Just PayPal your hard-earned cash to busblog@gmail.com. Want to support us, but the dude who should have paid you around Christmas time still ain't paid you, and it's March, and you're pissed because you know he's got it, and he's just holding out? Well, you can still help. Post your favorite episode on your Facebook. Tweet something nice about us. Tell your friends. Tell all your friends. Tell them how Here in LA is spelled, and then it's on Apple Podcasts and Google and Spotify. Here in LA is produced by myself, Tony Pierce, and a man who even comedians hire to lead their band, Jordan Katz. Editing, mixing, and music supervision by Jordan Katz. Original songs by Orgone, Jordan Katz, and in this episode, Joe Armstrong. Special thanks to Cindy for creating the logo, Jen for inspiring this, and KPCC for hiring Joe way back in the day, which is how we got to meet each other. Long live Pat the Hat!